Welcome back to An Eternal Soul in a Physical World. This is episode 57, and I'm actually joined today by a lovely person called Robertson. And there is a reason why I wanted to interview him today for you guys, because there's a lot of interesting stuff that's really relevant to what we've been journeying through in this Patreon group. So let me introduce him to you to start with. So Rob is a spiritual guide, a medium, a channel, and a healer. He teaches something called emotional fitness, which I think sounds pretty interesting. But aside from all this intuitive stuff, he's also a really successful business person and founded a company called the Unboxed Operating System, which is actually a company that provides lightworkers greater business freedom through automation, which is awesome. And that's gone really, really well for Rob over the last few years. And his latest pursuit, I guess, is becoming an owner of a retreat venue called Stargate Forest, which I'm going to be running a retreat from. Well, Rob and I are running a retreat together actually from there in October, which is really exciting. And as well as that, Rob also plays a lot of tennis and is really, really into that. And he is also writing a book, I hear. So it's all go in Rob's world. And I wanted to jump in. I just reconnected with Rob recently. I heard about his retreat venue. I was thinking of running a retreat. So that, kind of seemed to me like a synchronistic thing that he popped back into my life, and he had a retreat venue. So it just all kind of flowed from there. I met him for a coffee. Our philosophies seem to be really, really in line, quite crazily, because I don't often meet people who are kind of on that same level as me. So that was quite awesome. So yeah, it all seemed to be flowing. And I really wanted to bring Rob to this podcast because he's got a lot of valuable things that he's bringing to the world and a lot of valuable stuff that he's been through in his life that he's now going to be sharing through all these different things that he's doing. So first of all, welcome, Rob.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I was sitting there eagerly waiting. My chance will come. I do like talking.
Well, Rob, first of all, I want to ask you, I know that you've been through a lot of self-doubt in your life. And I know that you've told me that you're going to be writing a book soon about your overcoming of this and growing through all of that stuff. So I wondered if you could give us a bit of a rundown on this journey you've had with self-doubt and how you have managed to overcome it.
Absolutely. So self-doubt is I guess I'm so passionate about it because of most of my life. Self-doubt has, I won't say been debilitating, but it just affects your whole slant on everything. You see the world from your own projection of your doubt. So goes back to as a 11-year-old at sport. I was selected in the Mid-Canterbury rep soccer team, and I just didn't feel good enough. And I was playing in that with all these guys that were good players, and I just didn't feel good enough. And there's this pattern goes through, and I won't go into the full detail, but it wasn't until I went to university, and as a kid, 17-year-old, massive doubt still going. And that's when I had suffered anxiety, not knowing what anxiety was, and depression. And then, so I started to look at internally what was going on then, and I discovered positive thinking at that stage. And that seemed like the answer to everything, because positive thinking covered up the anxiety, and I was in the head, and I was feeling like I was indestructible. And that lasted 10 years until I was at a retreat in Australia and did this tuning exercise where I discovered huge anger and all this emotional eruption of stuff that I'd hidden because I was in the head being Mr. Positive.
Right.
And so that started the journey around understanding emotions, and I looked deeper into it, and really sexual abuse as a 7-year-old was from a farm worker, came out that and all this stuff came out. And that started the journey and the fascination around emotions. And so emotional fitness is what I talk about as the key to self-doubt, because self-doubt's an emotion. And if you try and solve emotional stuff in the head, as I did, well, then you just got a disconnect. So emotions and doubt go hand in hand. And that's been the real journey for me, as moving from this, when I started discovering emotions, moving from this real confusion, anger, and things like to the men's anger group to really release massive anger and get in. And so really that's the start of the journey. And since then, it's been an amazing, I won't say it's finished, because we're always on that journey, aren't we? But to feel okay about who I am, and in sports, the real barometer, and the way I've raised up the national tennis rankings, and in fact, this weekend won a regional tournament and things like that, is just a real evidence of where I've come from, being that person that had a lot of emotional stuff going on and just didn't really back myself, which under sport is, or in sport, is you get found out, because you can fake it till you make it in business. But in sport, when the pressure comes on, you fall apart unless you really have a clear head and believe in yourself. So that's a bit of a ramble on
that's awesome.
on self-doubt and sort of the starting point.
So, because when in our little chat we had with some of the chats we've had recently, you've mentioned that you have this thing that you do called deshiting. And I haven't really asked you about this yet, so I'm fascinated to know more about it, because in the stuff that I teach and in the Patreon podcast and all that I've provided so far, we've been really talking about letting go, letting go of the stuff that isn't us. Well, firstly, we make the distinction between, well, what are we really? We can't even really know that, can we? But we can know what we're not. We can experience coming up that doesn't serve us, that keeps us contracted and keeps us feeling limited. And we can practice letting that go, which more and more reveals this expansiveness and beauty underneath, which we can't really name or pinpoint or label, but we can certainly feel it the more we let go. So that's what we practice. So you're de-shitting. I'm wondering how similar it is to what we do. And can you give us a bit of a rundown on that? Like, how did you come across this process, and what is it?
Beautiful. All right. So I want to talk about how society views emotions. And a way of illustrating that is just to think in a little bit crude terms. So can I ask you a question? How would you feel if you'd been constipated for 3 days?
I would feel very irritable and uncomfortable, and not like I probably wouldn't be a very nice person to be around. Let's put it that way.
So our system is to, if we put it in crude terms, is to release that excrement. And so by releasing the bowels, we're de-shitting. So I like to think of it for people that are open-minded. We've lost some of the formal people by now, but they're probably very analytical and posh anyway. So we'll not our target market. So with this, if we think of emotions as the same, is that we all have our negative stuff, but we often hold on to it and we don't release it. So we sit on it for 3 days and we don't feel great. And then what this technique of de-shitting is whenever we feel a negative emotion, we release it essentially. And society doesn't tend to teach us this. We don't learn at school this about emotions, because we're taught perhaps emotions are something we control in certain areas, or if you really have an excessive emotion, you go to a doctor and you get antidepressants, for example. So that's what society teaches us. But right, let's get now to the technique. It is whenever you feel a negative emotion, you drop into it and feel it and release the source of it, essentially.
Mm.
So how that works is, if you're in an environment where you can really drop into it and really feel the emotion, then what you do is you actually feel whatever the emotion is and then drop down deeper. And I like to explain it as it's like an iceberg. What happens is, when we feel a negative emotion, we have an iceberg that's come to the surface, and we feel just the top layer of the iceberg. And then maybe we push it down. We don't want to deal with the emotion. It doesn't feel right. So we push it down and it goes away. But that's an emotional block, or our pain body. There's different names for it. And that actually creates our future, because we don't get what we want in life. We get what our unconscious stuff creates. And our unconscious stuff is our pain body and our emotional body and all the stuff floating around. So our future is created by these icebergs. But with deshiting, is how it works is that whenever you feel that negative energy or whatever, it's the surface of the iceberg. But what you do is you drop into it and ask, how do I really feel? Where's this coming from? You actually feel, and you don't need to analyze in the head. You just really feel and sit with it. But then ask, where's it coming from? And you go down. So you release and melt layers of the iceberg. And if you keep doing it for a few minutes until you get to the bottom, you actually release. There's an anchor point at the bottom of the iceberg, which actually keeps it in your psyche. So if you actually release the anchor point, you've actually got rid of a whole load of emotional blocks or our baggage, which is the real power that reprograms us in a simple process that you do by yourself. And why it's so powerful is that you firstly do it by yourself, but all our emotions are connected in a similar frequency. So for me, though I've had a lot of anger, of course, around childhood stuff, but there's a lot of other stuff. It's just things like we were told, oh, you can't do that. And that's a negative stuff that you take on and might get angry about. So it's all the stuff that sits in icebergs of similar frequency that are connected. So by doing this deshiting, we release all the stuff which actually manifests and creates our self-esteem. So for me personally, when I was first dropping into emotions, talked about this big anger and so forth, and there was just so much low self-esteem and just not feeling good enough and all the self-doubt, because in the head I'd been covering it all up by me being Mr. Positive. And I certainly know what many males feel like, and the fact you can't communicate emotions because you're in the head, and logic doesn't do emotions. So I certainly relate to what many males today deal with in some of the struggles, because that's all head stuff. But by dropping into the emotions and doing this, you release layers and layers of all the baggage, and you can do it quickly. I mean, for abuse, I've had talk therapy and different psychologists and so forth. But honestly, for me, that didn't really do much, talking about it. The power is when you drop into the emotion and go down to what the source of it and release it, because that's how you can get quick change, and you can reprogram, because it's our emotions that lead our thoughts. And it's by releasing our stuff, all of a sudden you can have these big breakthroughs and you feel different about who you are. It's not actually fun doing the de-shitting at the time, because it's all that ugly stuff, and it's like sitting on the toilet and putting your face in it. And you know what? Is that fun? We don't recommend that, of course. But if we want to release our shit, it's a powerful way of feeling it and sensing it. And if we frame it as it's about releasing our stuff and healing, and it is just a healing process of releasing our stuff, then that's when the magic happens, because you sit at it and you release it, but you don't sit in it for a long time. That's what I mean. A lot of people do sit in their emotion for a long time. You sit into it and drop down and just let it out.
Yeah.
And that's how massive breakthroughs. And for me, that's been the key to mental toughness in sport and in tennis, and why I've shot up the national rankings and so forth, and won a tournament this weekend in Northland. And it's about just being free, because you have an intention or a thought and you go for it. And if you don't have this emotional baggage shit that manifests, then you have an intention, you go for it, and you get what you want. And
Yeah.
that's the real power of and the freedom inside to release the doubt and just be free. So
Mm.
how's that for that
Yeah,
help?
it's awesome. And like you say, to sit in those feelings is not something that we'd sign up to do, like willingly a lot, but something we talk about in Patreon is the is being careful, well, just being aware of us judging those feelings, because it's the judging the feelings,
Oh,
isn't it, that keeps them stuck,
oh,
pushes the iceberg back under the water, doesn't it? Because
yeah.
that's saying it's not okay to feel this feeling's bad, this is one of those negative feelings, I'm not spiritual for feeling like this. It's a big one I've been through. But to actually just open to these feelings, and sometimes I like to call them
Mm,
like the notes of the orchestra. Like some notes are
mm,
low, some notes are high, and but all those feelings are the range of what's capable through this vehicle. And if we just let them through, it can bring a whole lot of insight
mm,
and a whole lot of healing, eh? But it's when we don't want to feel those things, when we're up in our head and we've judged it and it's not okay, and
mm.
that's the difficult thing, isn't it, that I think a lot of us have to realize with
Yeah,
healing.
but because the head judges, that's what it is. It analyzes and it's constantly judging. So by slowing that down, it just absorbs the energy, judging, analyzing. And by slowing
Mm,
that down, because our emotions lead our thoughts. So as
yeah,
we de-shit and get rid of our icebergs and our baggage, then the mind quiets and you
it
get rid
does.
of that judgment and
Yeah.
so forth. And one of the, but it's the judgments that are our framework which create our future. An example is I've been going through the stage where I haven't been sleeping as much, and I wake up, and of course, early with excitement, and of course, if I judge that as it's not okay, then all of a sudden I start feeling really tired, and all of a sudden, but by dropping into the emotion, and when I feel slightly tired, and just taking away the frame, because another topic, but as the shift in consciousness is happening, the world, the rules are changing of what's possible and what's not possible, because energetically things are changing on this planet big time. So it's letting go of the old rules, and no sleep or 4 hours sleep is okay for a
Mm,
lot of people if they drop into the real source and do different things. So it's letting go of judgments and being able to just be, because
mm,
it's the power is to be here and feel and sense and be okay to not know the answer. And it's that power of not needing to know and being really
mm,
present, because the
mm.
head is not present. We can't be present up there because we're analyzing, but to be truly powerful and present in the moment, it's just knowing and sensing and being okay right now is the now, and
Mm.
we're just being.
Oh, I love that. Yes, I know. And my last podcast was on the present moment and just really being in alignment with that. And I really like what you said then about you only had a little bit of sleep, but you wake up feeling excited and then you're judging yourself for that. Your mind's going, oh, I haven't had enough sleep. I should be tired, maybe,
Mm,
and then your body responds. But what you're doing there is you're declaring, I'm a limitless being. I'm not a body. I'm not limited to the thoughts that are running through my body, and
mm,
I'm choosing my sovereignty. Is it true that I should be tired? I really like that. One of the things I talk about in my podcast is sometimes when we've got a headache, we can say, oh, I'm just pretending to have a headache, because there's lots of stories that are going into that headache. And it's the
mm,
stories that are creating the reality of the headache. But when you know who you really are as something that's beyond all those stories, beyond the physical sensations that we're having, that's running through.
mm.
And this essence self is always, centered at home, at peace, in that oneness with the present moment, like you're saying, just flowing
Mm,
with the present moment. And if we just draw our energy back into that awareness of that essence that we are, and realize the rest of it's just a record playing around us, what are we going
mm.
to choose to focus on? Where are we going to put our awareness and believe is real? Because what we believe is real is what experience we're going to have. And I believe that's what you're doing there with Not much sleep then.
Yeah.
You're
Well,
choosing what you're going to believe in.
yeah, and because for me, I don't believe in positive thinking, and I better explain that, because that sometimes can seem wrong. For 10 years, I used positive thinking to control my reality, to be in a safe place, so I didn't have to deal with anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
And so positive thinking is going into the head and controlling things. So I I've been described as an incredibly positive person now by
Yeah.
people, but I believe in positive thinking. And the reason is, if we really drop into our true being, we're
Mm.
not positive, we're just who we are.
Yeah.
And that's a matter of letting go of the conditioning, because the head's always going to condition and judge. But if we let go of that and
Mm.
just be, well, then we're naturally positive, because,
Mm.
and we just feel so much more because we just are. So it's letting go of
Mm.
control and
Mm.
just be, which is a journey, especially in the weekend with a tennis tournament, when I'm doing new things, and with top seed, which hadn't been top seed before. Well, I had been recently, and just all these different things that are new. We soon go into old patterns, and it's always a journey to go into thinking about, only a few years ago in that tournament I went out first round and things like that, but now I'm top seed, and just all these sort of things, and the mind is going crazy. But there's a few structured, simple techniques to use to really ground the energy and
Mm.
let go of the mind and just get out
Yeah.
of this bullshit. We've used the word shit, so we can probably use bullshit, can't we?
Yeah.
In
Go
the
for
audience,
it. They don't
so,
mind. They're not precious.
aren't they? Oh, that's good. Yeah, so that's the journey, is really switching off the head and really feeling and just knowing, look, it is now, and
Yeah.
trusting. And for me, it's just amazing synchronicity and flows happened, because if you get out of the way and you just feel and sense, then that's the power. Because science has proven that every molecule is connected at an energetic way.
Mhm.
So all the answers are there if we just get
Mhm.
out of the way and feel and sense and get into the flow and just be. And that's the power of simplifying it. And a fascinating example this morning is talking to the builder doing renovations here at the retreat and expanding, doing all sorts of exciting things. And he was talking about the Maori culture and how very much about feel. And
Mm.
this is ancient wisdom. But in
Mm.
traditional New Zealand society, we forget, or we don't forget, we've probably never been taught how of just feeling and sensing, like our Maori culture is. And that's just the reality of reconditioning us to being and
Mm.
sensing, and just breaking out that tradition of, oh, you got to think about that first. God, we get taught and all this sort of stuff, which is
Mm.
where the power is.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I absolutely 100% agree with everything you just said right there. Amazing. And so we're going to be running a retreat together, which is going to be really, really fun. I'm so looking forward to
Mm.
that.
Yeah, same.
It is going to be focused around allowing people to do a lot of this de-shitting, to let go
Mm.
of blocks and limitations in order to really allow them to open to that flow and
Yeah.
to tune in to higher frequencies,
Mm.
to bring them through, to help to bring inspiration through for them and also for other
Mm.
people. We'll be partnering up and doing a lot of sharing and a lot of beautiful stuff. It's going to be a
Mm.
lovely journey. So you have said to me recently you've had a bit of an activation with your own channeling, and that
Mm.
you connected in with a group of beings. And so can you tell us a
Mm.
bit about that?
Yeah, so it was at a retreat, at the first retreat at the retreat center, and it was an activation to the Star Council. So
Mhm.
basically, I won't go into a lot of detail, but the Star Council are a force that overlook all the different planets. And so by being activated to the Star Council, I've found there's some amazing channeling ability, and
Mhm.
some things that come through have been phenomenal. And it's about just listening and connecting and being able to pass that activation on. So it's a bit like COVID, and that you pass it on, but it's at the other end of the scale. You pass on amazing activation to connect to the Star Council and be guided through that form of being. Because if you're dealing with the creators of the different planets, you're talking about high level stuff. So by channeling that, I found amazing gifts have come through, and all of a sudden, from the energetic change in me after the activation has been huge. Because, for example, I've had this property for a year and a half, and I have been building bush tracks here and doing things, but I've been not quite depressed, but I was sort of lost without a focus for a long time, and because I wasn't really on purpose. And this retreat just kick-started me, and I felt on purpose now, and all of a sudden the channeling that I've done for years has just come through, and it's just been an amazing experience, because what's happening in the planet is incredible. I mean, it depends. You can look at the doomsday artist and go down rabbit holes and all sorts of things, but what's incredible at the moment is the shifting. All the struggle that people are having is awakening or shifting people to feel and sense and get out of the head and the logic, the old ego, and all the stuff that's going on. So it's an interesting time at the moment to really be. And now I've gone on a bit of a tangent and forgotten even what the question was.
We were just talking about your channeling abilities and your activation, and
Thank you.
and what that's all about. Yeah.
Mm.
Nice, awesome. So that's kind of become a focal point of, well, a purpose for you. It's activated your purpose, you're saying. So you found more purposeful, and I guess in these times that we're living in now, that gives you a sense of purpose to carry on.
The big thing, sorry to interrupt, the big thing is knowing that I have now that I've never had. And
yeah.
I used to describe myself in terms of personality types. I don't remember a lot of detail, and I remember what I need to remember, but trivia, I'm hopeless and things like that. But now I've found, if somebody asks a question, rather than needing to use the mind, it just comes through with a knowing. And I'll just start talking, just the same as channeling. You don't know what's going to happen or what's going to come through. It's what actually is come through. And so just in everyday life, if people ask something, I'll just go in a conversation, and it'll just intuitively come through. And that's an incredible feeling, from the self-doubt that has been gradually subsiding over the years. But from that activation, all of a sudden, I just feel like I'll handle anything. It doesn't mean that I don't still have anxiety sometimes, because anxiety is a human emotion. And if we listen to society, they say it's bad, but it's just a nervousness. And so it's anxiety and different things are emotions that we have a toolkit, or basically de-shit. There is a collection of other things that are powerful, like the grounding and cutting off different cords and all sorts of other things that we cover on the retreat that are powerful to do. But it's getting into the knowing that emotions are feedback, and they're valuable, whatever they are, and just having the toolkit to know how to embrace them, own them, and be ourselves, and just live our purpose and go for it. That's really the shift for me, and the activation has been so powerful to help me really kick forward, I guess.
So tell us, like, where to for you now, like with your retreat center and your own personal journey and the work that you want to do for the world. Where are you at now? Where are you going with that?
Well, before the activation, I just had self-doubt and about lack of certainty about where I was going. I have this amazing 40 acres of native bush which has got incredible energy, and the places, everyone that comes here seems to say, oh, the feel of the property and all these. But I was just sitting here in doubt, not really moving forward. So where I'm going now is where the builders are, well, they've been quiet at the moment because luckily they said we're doing a podcast. And so it's positioned as the top of the market, as in it's not just a sort of basic. It's just it's not a 5-star, but it's just a bit different. And so we're really proud of the way it's come together as a retreat. And there's not a lot of more upmarket retreat centers that we know of. So it's positioned as something special with all the native bush. And where I'm going is, we just see this being my purpose is to grow people and support people because of my journey around self-doubt and helping people step out of that. And that's what I love doing. And so I do that through retreats. Running retreats is something that I see as a big part, as well as as the coaching and support of light workers and business people around that. So that's where I'm going, and it feels so good to be on track, but not need to know what the future is, and just trusting whatever will be is just feedback. Just like all our emotions, they're feedback, and whatever happens, if we get into car accident, it's feedback, and it's what's the meaning in that? And if we actually can stop and just feel and sense what's going on, it's all feedback, and it's for our higher good. It's for us to progress and improve and move forward. And that's what it is. It's all it is, feedback and support to help us move forward. And if we get out of the head, and that's constant analysis, because the head, and every time we judge, that's a framework of our future. And we block our future by living by this old three-dimensional framework, which is what we're taught at school. So it's just getting out of the way, just being, simplifying it, and that's the power, just to trust. I've gone on a little bit of a rant again.
No, that's great. It's like, well, the way I see it, there is this one present moment. There's this one present moment that is happening right now. We can't deny that, can we? And we're either in alignment, flowing with that and accepting it and enjoying it, or we're compartmentalizing it, cutting it up with the judgment. Like you said, I had a car, you have a car accident, and the mind's going, why did this happen to me? I'm such a victim. All of the ways that the mind is chopping up this situation and creating all this segmentation and separation from the present moment. Whereas just in the present moment, there isn't any bad, there isn't any wrong. The present moment just is, like you say, there is, when you are really with yourself, I can't remember the exact word you used, but you said there isn't positive thinking. When you're really deeply in yourself, you're not positive, so to speak, you just are, right? And that's the same with, the present moment, and our ability to just flow and be with it, or be with the mind and cut it up and feel like we're separate from the present moment. And when we feel separate from the present moment, we struggle, we feel uncomfortable, and we suffer. So it's an amazing process you're talking about here of we've kind of got different terminology and ways we describe it, but it's the same thing, coming back to that flow of this wonder and the enchantment of what is unfolding. It's just absolutely incredible, isn't it?
And it's the story jumped to mind when you're talking, and that was because in the moment, it's fear that often manifests our future. And I noticed this in, I've got let's use an example. This weekend at this tennis event, the ute didn't start, and I just knew that it didn't start for a reason. And I'm just constantly knowing that our fear or our thinking actually manifests in things like that happening. And so I knew that there was a reason why. So I didn't get angry like I used to, or I just knew, okay, that I'm not going to go to the shop now to get food between matches. So that was fine. And so I'll cut a long story short, the way we think actually affects technology, and our fear affects technology and our everything. And that's the really interesting thing, as the world opens up to understanding this, how the whole game is changing. And I'm not sure if that quite made sense, but anyway.
No, well, I liked it anyway. It's awesome. Yeah, and that's the kind of unboxed thinking that we need to be hearing. We need to be, that's why I really wanted to interview you, Rob, because you are out of the box. You've pulled, you've through everything you've been through, life has carved you to this place where you are, you're not just bound by society's thought system anymore. You've individualized, and which is something that is a process that is happening in humanity slowly but surely, because we're like a pack consciousness. A lot of us, we just subscribe to the same thinking and go along with the same trends and everything because it's more comfortable to do that, and it's actually really frightening for some people to break out of that. to go their own way with their own thinking and to feel their own truth and to express that and live that is petrifying, and not even, they're not ready to do that, a lot of people. But what I'm really interested in doing is hanging out with people like you and interviewing people like you and working with people like you that are, of this broken out.
Yeah.
Kind of
If I can just jump in, something's really jumping out coming through here is that the game is changing. And if people can get this, let go of the way the old rules, let's call them 3D rules, and be open to the new. It's things like, do you really need to sleep as much? Do you really need, and let's go with an out there example. And driving to the tennis event, I actually used light language to delete Akashic Records, because here's me going to a tournament where I've lost in the first round, and it's in Northland. I know a lot of people, and they've seen me as this sort of lesser player for many years. So use light language to delete some records, and then use light language to bring in some new. And there's just new things that are possible if you're open to it. But if you're still in the mind analyzing and thinking, well, this is the way it's done, this is how I've always done it, this is whatever, then you're not open to the new. So one of the key things is, as the dimensions shift, as time doesn't exist anymore. So it's really letting go of time. And that's a journey in itself. And it's not necessarily, but it's well, if you start looking for how that can happen, then you start to see that time doesn't exist, because we're in the now. And we're in the now, it completely changes what's possible. Like for example, my morning, I had planned out to do all sorts of things, but then with a builder here and somebody else, and my morning was completely shot. Didn't do anything I planned. But that's now. And I was wanting to do all this preparation and do some stuff for this, and which I didn't do. And of course, I was feeling nervous or anxiety by the time I got to this time to do the podcast. But it was all perfect. And it's just understanding that and breaking down our mind perception of what we expect and reprogramming it to just being. And that is the real power, and something that I'm still coming to terms with. And particularly in this tennis tournament, top seed in the men's doubles, and we won it, which was huge. And then the mixed doubles lost in the semi-finals, and that was actually turned out to be really good, because my body, I could hardly walk, and it was good to not play an extra match. And so it's just letting go of what's right.
And the agenda.
And just being and sensing and knowing the old rules don't exist anymore. You can play by them, but that's our conditioning, and we're judging that. But if you let go of the judgment and just be, then the new rules are, there's some freaky things happening. It depends who you follow. You can follow the 3-dimensional stuff and be consigned to that, or you can step into the new dimensions and so forth. But that's a topic for another day.
I am definitely loving that, driving to a tennis tournament and using light language to delete Akashic Records. I mean, awesome. Freaking awesome.
It's the first time I've ever done it, but sorry to interrupt, but it's the first time I've ever done it. But that's the thing, is just being open. Whatever comes through, and it's part of the channeling ability, whatever comes through, you don't know, but it's just happened. And
but why not? Why not, right? Why the fuck not? We can do these things when we break out of society's rules of what we should be able to do or what we are. You know, what are we really? We're not this body, we're not this belief system. We have an ability to connect with this massive larger self, which is infinite in its resources. And if we can open to those resources, where it's infinite in what we can achieve and create and manifest and live.
And that's what I love about the power, is just not needing to know, but knowing that it is just perfect. And that's not positive thinking. It used to be positive thinking for me, and that was just a disconnect, and it was complete on a different planet. There was not reality, because I was positive thinking and I was disconnected and I was in this la la land. But now if it's coming from a source and you de-baggagize, de-shit, and you get
Mm.
rid of that emotional stuff that blocks you to feel and sense the source and just be present.
Mm.
That's the power, and that's priceless.
Would you say that's going from positive thinking to peace? That's kind of
Oh
sounds like
yeah,
positive.
that,
Instead of positivity, it's more like inner peace. Or you could say alignment.
yeah, it's the truth.
Right.
It's just connecting. It's getting out of the way and being. And
Yeah,
because otherwise we're living in la la land,
yeah.
which I certainly know all about, and I go into
Delusion.
that state. And
Yeah.
it's not like I have all the answers. It's I have a journey like anyone, but
Mm.
it's getting more fun as we
Yeah.
really live on track and feel. But part of
Mm.
emotional fitness is knowing that you have to feel all emotions, and that's higher levels of consciousness. Is when we open up our feeling body at all levels and open up our emotional range, and that's where we see more, because
Mm.
we are open to different levels and we sense and feel and see more. And that's part of the journey, which has its ups
Absolutely.
and downs.
And definitely
But
what I've
yeah.
noticed is that when being a channel myself and teaching people channeling for all these years, that it's definitely when somebody becomes more connected to themselves in the way you're saying, and are
Mm,
able to open up to all the different emotions and able to understand themselves on that deep level and let go,
mm,
then they, as a mirror, become more connected to the universe. You can't have one without the other. It's all mirrored, you know. If
yeah.
I'm connected to me, I'm connected to the universe. It's the same thing. So when we do that work with ourselves, we automatically line up for that higher connection with whatever, you know.
Mm. And it's actually reminds me of how I met you. It was would have been 8 years ago. You were doing an Auckland visit, and you were
Mm.
doing healing sessions, and here was me
Yeah.
battling away with. I was still really doing a lot of emotional work, and
Mm.
did a healing session with you, and then I did your channeling course
Mm.
um, a couple of years ago, and then yeah, become friends with you after that, and so yeah,
Mm.
that's been great how I've stepped from being, I guess, feeling like a pupil of yours to being beside you now, and
Yeah.
we have such similar alignment. That's why
Mm.
it's a delight. We have fun with along the way, so
It
it's
is. It's
nice.
really cool and really fun to be able to kind of spar with somebody on the same wavelength.
Mm,
Um, yeah, really cool. So I'm really, really looking forward to coming up there and checking out your retreat and running this awesome retreat with you. It's going to be so fun.
mm,
So I'm going to
yeah.
sign us off now. Thank you so much, Rob, for coming along to this podcast and sharing your journey with us and your insight, and just whatever's come through has just been perfect
Mm.
at this moment. And I'm really grateful to that. And we will be seeing you very soon. Well, I will be. And
Uh,
everyone else, I'll put Rob's details in the description of this video and this podcast. So if anyone wants to have a look at some other stuff he's up to, then you're welcome to do that. And anything you want to
thank
say to close, Rob? Anything you want to say to finish?
oh, oh, thank you. I'll put it's deshiting.com if people want to
Nice.
download a PDF. And I'd like to just thank you, because this is such a fascinating journey that we're
Mm.
on, and who knows what the future holds. But
Yeah.
I just really love doing things like this where we
Mm.
can connect, and together the future's about together and about community and sharing the journey. And it's pretty lonely if we do it by ourselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just love these sort of things and working with you. So thank you for the opportunity to share today,
My
and
pleasure.
look forward to talking soon.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Much
Okay.